All right.
Steve, yep,
Sound check,
yep.
sound check. Tina's
Julia,
there. Bob's there. Christy's
yeah.
there. Thank you. Hi from Olympia, Washington. All right. We got folks coming in East Coast and West Coast. That's great. Loving it. Okay, very good. Okay, I know we are starting a minute or so early. We have so much to cover tonight, and I think it's just I can see the attendee ticker just kind of continuing to go up. So welcome everyone. We'll do another quick welcome in a few minutes, but tonight we have a very special session. This is actually kind of the first time we've really focused on flowers, and we have two folks with us. One that's almost like an industry expert who's going to be talking a little bit about what's going on in the industry to figure out whether or not flowers are actually a viable business. Because some people say, really, can you make enough money from flowers, and is anyone else doing it? And we actually have someone who's doing it, and we're going to go through with a Backyard Riches member and actually break down their business model, look at the numbers, and look at kind of their overall model, as well as their crop selection, and something really unique that we have never heard of before in the way that she's selling flowers, which is going to be really exciting to cover. So with that being said, why don't we just jump in here and let's talk about the Flower Farm Startup. A lot of great pictures here you can see. Wally, these are pictures of Gail, is that right?
Yeah, that's all Gail's photos of Gail when she used to be a lot more active in flower production, but that's definitely her, yeah.
That's great. And you can see there's all sorts of, this is a mix in between the flowers and the veggies, but you can see what she's doing over here in this bottom left-hand corner. And, just recently in the flower, or in the U.S., flowers, especially locally cut, locally grown flowers have taken off. Primarily on social media, the growth has been because of Oprah and Martha Stewart really being focused on it, and there's a lot going on in that space. So the question really is becoming, is it possible? And there's one other lady that's been doing quite a bit in this space to help to take a lot of this, what's going on in social media, and to centralize it and create a space for folks that are interested in doing this full time and really help to organize this industry. And that's Deborah. Hey, Deborah, are you with us?
I am. Welcome, everybody.
Awesome.
Thanks for including me.
Yeah, you got it. And so, Deborah, your last name is Prinzing, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So now you're a writer and you're a lecturer as well. You've been on radio and even on TV. You have a background in journalism, but also in horticulture. And you've written two books now, which is Slow Flowers and the 50-Mile Bouquet, which was, as you mentioned earlier, a response to a challenge of being able to have locally grown flowers, which you cut every week for 50 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, the Slow Flowers book is basically a year in my garden, and my audience originally was home gardeners and people who just love to flower garden. And the book was my attempt to show them that you can have local flowers year round, even in colder zones, if you focus on the seasons.
That's
and
great.
Are willing to have your vases look like what it looks like outdoors.
Yeah, yeah. So at slowflowers.com, we're going to go over that a little bit more here because this website, which you can see here on the right-hand side, you launched in 2014, and you've got 220 members at that time, and currently now at 725 members. Almost all the states, as well as in Canada, is represented there. And you are kind of bringing this community together to recognize a lot of kind of what we do in Backyard Riches, which is understanding seasons and understanding
Right.
how to reduce the overall footprint, how local folks can get involved, and encouraging the industry to support both small and large local local farmers, but really also focusing folks on sustainable, both financially and environmentally sustainable farming practices in the flower area. So tell us just a little bit kind of what drove you into this space to get started? Because you've got with these 2 books and podcasts and the website, it's very interesting. Tell us a little bit of background about how you got started with this.
Right. Sure. I really do come at all of this whole topic of flowers being truly a part of agriculture that has been ignored by many. I come to it as a storyteller, and as I wrote books and wrote for top magazines and newspapers documenting stories about people I found fascinating, small scale flower farmers and also their clients, florists. I was constantly asked this question in the media and by audiences, which is, Deborah, we drank the Kool-Aid. We believe in supporting local flowers. We know it's important for many reasons, economic stimulation in rural and urban economies, saving farmland, preserving sort of the floral heritage that our grandparents had and perhaps our parents had. So everyone would say, I love it. I believe in it. But how do I find local flowers? How do I know that something's locally grown or, from a farmer in my community? And finally, I just said, someone needs to create a directory. And eventually that someone became me. And that's how slowflowers.com started. It really was just my attempt to collect information and share it with people who are looking for farmers they can buy from or florists who they know patronize local farmers. And it's just steamrolled from there into multimedia channels of telling those stories.
That's great. So you've got the podcast, and that's 213 episodes. I mean, that's quite a a list there, but with lots of downloads each. And the stats that we're looking at for the industry, because folks are probably wondering, how many local farmers are there out there besides these big manufacturers? But you've got 725 on there with a target of 1,000. But 351 of them of your members describe themselves as flower farmers only, with 100 of them offering local delivery, 102 that are retail, 142 studio florists, 303 are members that design for weddings and events, and 20 floral businesses that offer national shipping. So really what we're talking about is a smorgasbord of different types of members and business models being represented here. So it's not just one type, but there's all sorts of businesses that are focused on this and that are getting involved.
Right.
So tell us.
I want to mention
Go ahead.
one thing. Let me just mention a couple things about that last slide. A lot of people self-identify in more than one category, so obviously those numbers don't add up. But there's this sort of emerging category, which anybody who's been on social media, especially Instagram, will have seen, and that's the person who's calling themselves the farmer florist. And that's, perhaps one of the reasons why we're here tonight is that there's been an explosion of people who perhaps come out of an art background or a design background, who love growing and combine those two skill sets to create a business for themselves.
Right. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in the States, because I found some of these stats super interesting. With 80% of the cut flowers sold in the U.S. are actually imported from Central and South America. What's happening with the U.S. and what's changing?
Well, this number has been, this statistic has been around for about 25 years, since 1991, when the U.S. trade policymakers came up with a act called the Andean Trade Preference Agreement. And really that was our so-called war on drugs, to try to incentivize people who were growing coca in South America to switch crops and perhaps grow flowers instead. And what that did was open the floodgates to the U.S. market and Canada as well, for other reasons. I mean, I think Canada just kind of got caught up in that sweeping legislation that flooded North America with cheaply produced flowers that were, grown with different labor and environmental regulations, little or none really, than we would have in the US and Canada. So that's sort of been the status quo since the early 90s. And that needle's not going to move very far, just because imports are here to stay. And, there's a mass market that gobbles up cheap flowers. But the excitement is that the needle's moving to see more people planting and growing and marketing flowers. And that's the second bullet point. Those are USDA numbers. USDA does a floricultural census every 5 years. 5,085 people self-identified as growing some or all of their land with flowers in 2007. Then that went up 16% to 5,903 in 2012. So 2017, our current year, is a census year, so we'll see those numbers come out next year, and I'm predicting that we'll see that percentage grow even more because just anecdotally, we know that there are more people excited about using some or all of their acreage for flowers.
Yeah. Wally, we often mention that flowers is a great way to add some nice profitability to this. Would you say that flowers, when we talk about a repertoire, is almost always on the high end of profitability as well when we're looking at crop selection?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so just based on my own experience watching Gail. I know she can put together, let's say, $10 bouquets very quickly with very little land base required for that, especially if you start foraging for stuff too. So definitely, I'd say it's right up there with, some of the other crops that we've discussed in previous open houses.
Yeah, it's not a surprise to see this floriculture as one of the top five most profitable crops in there. With all of the crops that we've broken down on a square foot basis, including time to harvest as well, flowers are definitely a big hit. But you're also seeing that Americans, at least in this marketplace, are becoming more and more interested in the origins and where the flowers are actually grown. Is that right?
Yeah, it's true, and people basically don't have the information. They have to be told, and the idea has to be introduced to them about, do you know where your flowers come from? This first two bullet points that you've got up on the screen now, the 74% of consumers who don't know where their flowers come from was part of a California Cut Flower Commission study or survey a couple years ago. And the follow-up question to that initial one is, if you were offered a choice to buy American-grown flowers, would you? And 58% of people said yes. So it's more about getting the information. The desire is there. And this last point, 80% of Americans would pay more for a made in USA product. I think that just is indicative of what's happening across many consumer categories, in cars, in fashion, in clothing, in our wine and food, and of course in flowers. Yeah,
I would agree with you. And I love this image. You can see the little sticker where it says CA grown, and we've been talking a little bit about this, that it's just really important that for growers to self-identify. In Lourdes, your case, and I know you're going to be talking about it here in a second, it may not be a situation where you really have to tell people where your flowers are from. But if you're working with any other retailers or any other sources or channels that we talk about at Backyard Riches, that on getting your product out to market, it's important. It's important because the folks that do have a preference, they'll be able to see it. And I can tell you that I've never seen any place that I've ever purchased flowers where anyone has said where their flowers were from. So it's important if you want to differentiate yourself, especially if you want to charge a little bit more here and there.
Yes, for sure. And I really like what Deborah said too about social media has really made an impact or helped the small flower farms to be kind of in the mainstream now. A lot of people prefers them. I'm following a couple of flower farmers in Manitoba, and they can easily market themselves, and people are responding. They are heading out to where they're sending their flowers.
That's great. So Lourdes, now your organization, Slow Flowers, you're helping actually to raise awareness. Did you start this American Flowers Week, or are you just kind of helping to promote it?
Oh, you mean, Deborah?
Deborah, yeah.
I'm sorry, Lourdes. I meant Deborah.
Yeah. Well, as I said, Slow Flowers sort of started as a book, and then it was, this website, and then the podcast, and all of a sudden, this opportunity to create a campaign nationwide using social media, American Flowers Week, kind of landed in my lap because British Flowers Week has been around since 2015 and 2013, and I became friendly with the people in the UK who are promoting British grown flowers. They're very parallel to what's happening in Canada and the US and the UK. And so they really shared all their resources with me and said, hey, why don't you start American Flowers Week? So it was very low cost grassroots endeavor that is now grown to, this year we had, amazing social media impact of 5 million impressions in the campaign. And now I have been working closely with a group of flower farmers and florists in Toronto who want to start Canadian Flowers Week next year. So just stay tuned because it's gonna happen in a really big way in Canada, which
but
it's really just
also helping with other ways. You guys put together local meetups. You help with some brand building, media outreach, and things like that as well. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. I mean, basically, the role of Slow Flowers is to help promote its members to their audiences, be it consumers, florists, or the media. And so we do that through all kinds of editorial projects and utilizing all kinds of tools from traditional to print to non-traditional media, new media.
This is non-traditional media. This is what Twitter and Instagram.
Right.
And this is just showing a little bit of the growth. There's some cycles going on here, which you can see are the winter time. But this is for the hashtag Slow Flowers, and you can see the growth that's happening here. A lot of impression, but I really want to call out the fact that there's been 30,000 posts that have used this hashtag, and unless that was you putting out 30,000 posts in 1 year, this is really impressive. See how
it's not me.
Yeah, right. To see how many people are actually including this and pushing it out. So,
yeah, I mean, one of my biggest I didn't mention this when we did the run through, but one of my biggest participants is a farm in Athens, Georgia, called Three Porch Farm, and that couple, it's a husband and wife team. They have a wonderful local flower farm business and floral design business. They use Slow Flowers, hashtag Slow Flowers, on every single post, and they've been featured in the New York Times and in Martha Stewart. So it really helps. What their use of the hashtag benefits everybody who's using the hashtag. That's
great. Well, we are already starting to get behind here, but I do want to cover the last few slides that we have quickly. Florists and flower farmers are selling, through wholesalers, through grocers, through e-commerce, through other florists, or through their own retail shops themselves. And there is a significant demand for local flowers, and you can see people out there are beginning to promote the fact that they're American grown or locally grown. And you can see that in this magazine here, Floral Business, that that's becoming something that people are really talking about and looking for. So I think that's something for all the folks that are on our that are here with us today that might be interested in this and looking at this business, is understanding there is a marketplace for this and some demand. As you can see in quite a few of these slots here, you can in these pictures, you can see how folks are marketing them here with their banners. You can see it in their marketing materials where they're on their counters, and as well as in some of the other marketing or advertising that they're doing as well, being local.
And I think that was a key point, Deborah, that you wanted to respond to, about how local flower farmers are differentiating themselves or identifying themselves. And I think we talk about certification. I think that's coming up.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's one way. Labeling is another.
Yeah, here's some of the labels, and people on their brand logos and these sorts of things are beginning to really talk about the local, where things are grown, locally grown, where that they're mountain fresh flowers, they're Appalachian grown. You can see these sorts of things happening in the labeling. And then there are some certifications. Do you want to run us through these certifications, Deborah?
Sure. This certified and naturally grown, it sounds like your group has already covered that in the past. So I'll just mention that that's been an option for farms that are really wanting to identify their growing practices as sustainable and organic, even though they're not certified, USDA certified. CCOF on the upper right is a California state organic certification, which is actually endorsed by USDA. Salmon Safe is something we're seeing a lot in Oregon and Washington, where I'm based. I'm based in Seattle. It is a way for flower farmers to indicate to their consumers in just a really a compelling graphic that their practices are safe for salmon habitat, which is, of course, something consumers in the Northwest are highly aware of. And then Certified American Grown is a campaign that was started by a group of flower farmers. I was involved in the launch about 3 years ago. It's the decision that flower farmers, especially large ones, have sort of decided to self-label, and all these groups use independent third-party agencies or services to verify the practices, or in the case of Certified American Grown, that all the flowers that bear this label are domestically produced.
Okay, awesome. So I think as we begin to wrap up here, it's important to know that there are national and regional associations. Slow Flowers, you have these meetups that we mentioned earlier. What are these other organizations that folks should be interested in if they're planning on going down this road?
Sure. Well, the lower left-hand corner graphic is the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. This is the most established professional growers group in North America. It's very vibrant in Canada. In fact, they just changed their governance to add a representation on their board of directors from Canada, because there's something like 70 or 80 members across the country in Canada. And then they're really focused on educating flower farmers, new to established, with best practices. These other groups that that you see on the right-hand side of the slide, that's from a screenshot from one of my forecasts about trends, and that is that micro-local groups are coming together to fill a need because of regional differences in perhaps in their cultural practices or the type of marketplace they have, where a national group may not be able to help them sell their flowers. They're coming together. It's SC Upstate Flowers is in South Carolina. Then there's the Ohio Flower Farmers Group. They're trying to create their own internal endeavors to promote and sell and raise awareness. And this is happening in many parts of the country. It's really exciting.
Great. Okay. And we just want one more time, wanted folks to see the website, which is slowflowers.com. And, if you're interested in this and finding out more, definitely go and check out Deb's website. They have so many, and we're excited to see what's going on with Canada next time we check in. It'll be great, and we'd love to help you reach that 1,000 members in 2018. We have 2016 right here. I know it's supposed to be 2000.
Oh, that's an old graphic. I didn't update it for this, but yeah, anybody who's interested in more information can certainly reach out to me. I'm happy to send you more information or point you to people in your marketplace who are already involved, who might be a good resource for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and I know you're going to log out and log back in, so we look forward to having you on for later in the call. We might do a little bit of Q&A. If you all have had questions or wanted to line up a little bit, we're going to jump into now. Thanks, Deborah, and we'll talk a little bit later. We're going to jump into now going over the SPIN fundamentals for creating a flower farm operation. And just as a reminder for everyone, the SPIN guidelines, which stands for Small Plot Intensive, for those of you that this might be your first time, remember that our fundamentals here is that this is an owner-operated kind of backyard scale or multi-backyard scale type of business model that will really serve your local or your greater local market. We're focused on helping people get to a specific revenue goal and really not spending a lot to get started, and with a focus of getting to income very, very quickly. So with that being said, let's dig through some of these other fundamentals around SPIN, and then we'll get to our special guest speaker. So with SPIN, you have a lot of options for land base. You can use front yards, backyards, you can use other people's yards, we can use back alleys, containers on patios, wild spaces, peri-urban areas, and you can scale these things up or down. And really, it's neat because you can really start to look at our segments, which is 1,000 square feet, and you can scale up to those, or you can even scale up to several acres as you need. I love this picture, by the way, here where you can see this is kind of an alley. Things are growing here along the side, along the fence there, and it's a really fantastic way to take advantage of some potentially unused space. And with the operating models that we help folks to self-identify through are part-time or full-time, and whether it's seasonal or year-round. So in our Picking a Farm operating model, Wally goes over the pros and cons of each and helps you really to go through and figure out what's going to be good for you based on your lifestyle and your goals. So if you're interested in a little bit more on that, you can see our Picking a Farm operating model with Wally that Wally did in one of our previous member meetups, and that's in the member site. So thinking about when you're starting up, is this really an extension of your veggie business, or is this something where you're doing just flowers? And it's something you ought to think about because it's going to impact the overall planning. If you already have customers, if you already have folks that are buying from you, adding flowers to it is a no-brainer. If you're going to go just flowers, it may be a different type of customer, and you're going to want to do a little bit more of R&D, figuring out your seasonal changes. It might be a little more expensive to start to get out there, and you're going to want to really understand what the demand is from your customer base. So major investments to consider, not that different from a typical spin startup. So if you're already a Backyard Riches member, you have access to the full breakdown in the Grow Your Way to 100K, but we're going to go over these items here just briefly. The cooler, this would be something you can get at a bankruptcy sale. It should be a reach-in. We highly recommend you buy used ones to get started, and you're going to need good irrigation. So this would be components that you can just buy at any old garden center, hardware store to make sure you have plenty of that. Other than that, in your stock, you're going to need a workstation. You can see this here. Your farm stand display. If you're going to be selling at farms at any kind of farmer's market or in a temporary retail area, you're going to want to see those. And of course, you can see the Creating a Farm Identity session that we just did that went over all the different pieces there. And then, of course, you'll need a delivery vehicle of some sort. You can always start with your personal vehicle. But if you've seen all this and you notice what's missing in the gear is the rototiller. And really, Roxanne, you mentioned that this really isn't needed for a startup in the flower market. And if you get pretty big, you could always rent one, but it's a use it one time type of scenario. And then after that, you really don't need it until you scale up. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Wally can speak to that more than I can, but obviously, relays, you're not doing the intensive planting of veggies one right after the other in the same plot. So Wally, what's pretty much the scheme of flower planting?
Well, I would say, I mean, you're going to have a big component of bulbs and stuff like that. That requires that your land be broken up to make for easy planting. So I'd say, but Julian is right. I mean, you could rent, let's say once or twice a year, maybe for, early in the season, and get your land prepped for your plantings, and then maybe later on, once your garden is finished, get that late season tilling, just to put the your garden out of production. So yeah, you don't really need to buy one. It'd be a nice thing to have, but you don't need to because you're not going to be using it that often.
So quickly to recap then, you got a cooler, you got irrigation, workstation, you've got your delivery vehicle, and you've got your market display. And you're looking at about $1,000 to $4,000 in that range for the gear as a startup. But your stock, on the other hand, you got to be prepared. It's not the same as a handful of seeds to get started. The bulbs can be low to mid thousands. The seed costs for perennials can be up to $1,000. Seed costs a few $100s. So if you're going to go out and start full time, be ready for the upper $1,000, mid to upper $1,000. So it could be any range, anywhere from $3,000 or $4,000 all the way up to $8,000 or $9,000 in that range altogether. But the great part about it is you have big box stores like Costco and hardware stores that you can go to get everything that you need. So no specialty stores needed.
Well, and the other point to make is that they're really more an investment than an expense, because you buy a bulb once and it produces for many years. So it's not like you have to make that kind of investment every year.
Yeah, that's right. And we did have a note from Tina. She just chimed in and said that it looks like no-till is working really well for her, and not having a till at all, which is great to hear. Especially when you're first getting started, that saves quite a bit of money. So when we're looking at the types of products that you'll have, I mean, you're looking at single flower bouquets, mixed arrangements as well, and the pricing, a $10 bunch here, or mixed bouquets for $10. Our new gauge is a small bouquet for $5 or so. And you can, and they're great. I love it that you have it there as an impulse buy, because that's exactly what it is. When it's $5, people might just say, yeah, and give me that too. So it's a great way to upsell. What you're doing there is to have a couple of small ones. You never know who they're going to want to deliver to. So when we're thinking about planting, keeping in mind the spin methodology again, continuous production for different flowers throughout the season is going to be key for your efficiency. And a lot of flowers can be harvested for quite a long time throughout the year. This is going to require a little bit of direct planting. So you got bulbs by hand, and you got to dig things up before winter in certain climates and store them. And you'll have some transplants, so you'll need plug trays. And then, of course, you can directly seed by hand as well. So you can see a couple of examples here. The spin straddle, so making sure you're designing your rows according to spin guidelines. And then you got a rake over here where you can see after the seeds have been kind of laid down. And then getting to harvesting, some must-have items. You can see super helpful to have a belt there, so you have your floral shears are easily accessible, some small pruning shears, and then regular scissors from a dollar store can really go a long, long ways. And we have in here seamstress scissors can also work. But make sure you have that belt. It's going to be super helpful. And then planning out your marketing, you really need to have a strategy. And how are you going to put together bouquets? How are you going to market your products overall? And making sure you understand at your farmer's market, if you're going to be selling there, that you promote not just your flowers, but you promote your services. And you will frequently get unsolicited queries, but you should start with some small events as well and see if you can provide flowers to small events, which is going to be a great way to kind of get going. As always, restaurants are our friends. There's a great way to get started and leave some marketing material there so people know that the flowers are local flowers in partnership with such and such your business. As they're dining, they can see that. You'll get some contacts that way. And also reaching out to corporate offices. There's a lot of corporate offices that will pay for fresh cut flowers on a weekly basis as well. So super important to kind of think of all your different channels and pay attention to these fundamentals, which is the 3 design elements: color, texture, variety, and your main design principles, which is contrast, colors, and shapes. So that being said, here's in our guide 15 of our Grow Your Way to 100K, here's the exact model that we put up before, where you can see it here. Here's the breakdown. So this is a yard sharing model here, and you can see this is a setup for a part-time seasonal operation. This would be potentially for a mother-daughter or 2 partners, maybe a couple relatives, maybe a couple friends. This is a high road, which in spin language means we're using the commercial cooler, and we're specializing in flowers only. Multi-locational, so it's the mother's front and backyard, daughter's backyard, maybe a neighbor's backyard as well. And that's kind of what we're going to say as our plan here. So if we go through this would be like a typical crop repertoire where we have some bulbs. You can see some lilies there and perennials. You have like daisies. You have some seeds. And then you also have some wild natives, some baby's breath, maybe some brown-eyed Susan, and those sorts of things. And in the guide, we give you a complete breakdown of all the options. And then for actually selling these and how you're going to actually sell them at the farmers market, you could use coffee can bouquets, and you can see those items, and you could use any kind of really recycled cans and that look semi-decorative. And you can also go with some nosegays there, where you can sell those to restaurants. They love to have those set up as $5 each on their tables. And your land base would look something like this. So you have 2,500, 2,000, 500, 1,500. That's adding up to 6,500. Wally, can you help me with the math? Is that about, what is that? It's not even a quarter acre, is it? It's more like just over an eighth of an acre at 6,500 feet?
It'd be about an eighth of an acre.
Eighth of an acre, okay. So we got 4, hopefully closely located, centrally located spaces here. And the planting plan itself, as you can see kind of with each of the spaces, what's getting what. So you're getting yard 1, which is 2,500 square feet, then yard 2, yard 3, yard 4, and each one you can see kind of what you would plan in each one, what you would do maybe on the fence here, maybe in the perimeter areas, and it breaks it all down. We have a couple of images in there, but this is just to give you an idea of what a plan would look like and the overall model. So in this situation, you'd have a cooler, irrigation, farm stand display. You need a couple $100 there. Assuming you already have a personal vehicle, you're looking at about $3,200 as a startup. Just got another question, just as a reminder before we get to Lourdes. If you have questions about this or anything else, start putting them into the chat area to line them up as we're going through, because we'll address them as we get a chance. So Bob mentions that he's actually selling to teachers and to their local school system, that's fantastic. Another great source if the teachers will buy, or if the school will buy from you. There's all sorts of, once you start thinking about it, there's all sorts of organizations that you can really reach out to. Dentist office loves to have fresh flowers, another great source. And if you just think about all the folks that you are working with yourself personally. So in Guide 15, we have a breakdown of all the different pieces for bulbs, perennial, and seed costs in our model. So you can see with the different items for bulbs, perennials, and seed costs, the total amounts that we have for a suggestion on getting started, so that you can meet your overall target goal, which is, dun, 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 drum roll, $15,000 here. So in this
wait, 33,000.
I'm sorry, 33,000. That's right. The $15 per
unit.
Is that right? 33,000 right here. Thank you, Roxanne.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to bust out my highlighter for those of you that know that I love to highlight. So you can see these are the revenue numbers here, and this was the 33,000 here that we're targeting for this model. So it's not bad. It's a great, it's a great overall model, and it's a significant amount. But look at really what we're at. We're at the 6,500 square feet here. Marketing weeks of 15, 115 bouquets to be sold on a weekly basis. Total units, 2,200 bouquets at a target of $15 per unit. That's what gets you to the 33,000. Now, in this, we also include the restaurants that were sold the nosegays for 5 of them for $15 here. So we have that overall pricing in this estimate that you see. So it's important for you to understand that that's totally possible. And just looking at the numbers again, you're looking at 6,500 square feet. So this model here is at around $5 per square foot, right? So it's a 5-to-1 ratio. That is really high. And as we talk to one of our members here, Lourdes, who's on the phone with Kevin today. Hi, Lourdes. Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to break down her numbers at the end here. And as you can see, she's doing about 9,000 on 1,600 square feet. So this is an even higher number. This is much closer to the $6 per square foot, a little bit higher than the 5 in our model. So it's totally possible. We have a real life example here with us. We're excited to get in. Thanks for all of you for listening through that portion. now let's get into finding out more about you, Lourdes. So tell us a little bit about yourself, since you are actually you've been in the States, what, about 8 years? Is that right?
Yeah, well, I moved to Manitoba in 2009. Yeah, it
Sorry,
was
you're
in
in Canada.
2000.
Is that right?
I'm sorry?
You're in Canada?
Yes, yeah, we are in Canada. So I moved here. Kevin lived here like all his life, but I've been working for a wholesaler in the last 5 years. So the company that I work for, and I'm one of the buyers, we actually import flowers from all over the world. But my account are mostly South America. But also through this job where I got my hands into flower arranging, and I realized that I have yeah, and eventually, like I grew a passion for it. And meeting Kevin like a year and a half ago, um, yeah, and been reading a lot on slow food movement and learning about the slow flower movements. And we started gardening last year, and after that one season, and with my background in importing flowers and being able to make wedding bouquets for my friends, we realized Kevin has a land. He has a 5-acre land in eastern Manitoba. We have about an acre land that is cleared, and we are just working on a 400 square feet, about 600 square feet garden actually. And yeah, so the passion just grew from that, like working from a wholesaler, being able like to do flower arrangement for friends and actually doing weddings. And we really did love gardening last year, and we thought maybe we should try growing flowers.
That's great. So this year, you really got further into this, and then you've generated quite a bit of lessons that you're getting ready to apply to your 2018 goals. So let's dig through that.
Yeah,
So you
we
said you
did.
never underestimate
So
how much plants can grow. Why is that?
you know what? So we have the land right now. It's just 600 square feet garden, and so we still wanted to grow vegetables. So we have a hoop house, which is about 200 square feet, and then the rest of the land we're still like growing vegetables. So for me, like I still wanted to do both things, but I realized, after talking to Wally, I met with Wally in July, and talked to a couple like flower farms in Canada, to one from BC, and they really did encourage me to maybe just focus on flowers, which I wasn't at the beginning of the year. I wanted to do both. So it makes sense to just focus our operation in flowers. Yeah. So, and yeah, never underestimate how much your plants will grow. So we have a hoop house, and all the seedlings that I sow, we put in the hoop house. Yeah, because we wanted the other half to be like the vegetables. But now, they are bursting. They
So
are really.
one of the recommendations is don't overplant. So that's super important. And you're talking about the fact that the overcrowding actually
Yeah,
stresses the plants.
they do. Yeah.
Why do you say to take weeds seriously?
You know what? Well, their current setup right now too, like I'm only at the farm on the weekend. I still work and live in the city. I work full time in the city, and the only time that I get to help Kevin in the garden is like on a Saturday and a Sunday. And in the days that we would have like so much rain, and I'm not in the farm so much, then on a weekend it can be overwhelming. Like, and then if I miss, or him like miss a weekend out from the farm and not being able to work like the following week, it is just really it can be overwhelming. So yeah, there are a lot of measures that we could have used to controlling the weeds, like using mulches for sure, like in between beds. For what we are using right now with land-based, yeah, on those open spaces between the flower plants, we could have used a lot more of that. Yeah, so those are the lessons that for sure. Oh, and also the one that it's not on the slide. So when we started the seedlings are all from seeds, and so we have greenhouse structure those little ones that you can put inside your house. So it works well. Like we have a greenhouse light in there as well. But one thing we forgot is the air circulation. So we should have like put a fan in it so that there wouldn't be any molds as well. And yeah, that would have helped us as well. Like I think with all these seedlings that you're seeing right here, I had maybe like, I don't know, a couple of seed trays that didn't make it. Some of them have a mold, so I decided not to plant them, but that would have been prevented if we had that air circulation.
That's a great tip. Yeah. Yep, that's a great tip. So for 2018, a couple of goals that you guys have is getting a cooler because you're saying here the vase life for flowers not being pre-cooled is average about 7 days. So this will really extend the life of your product. And you add another hoop house and get a greenhouse with a fan with some circulation.
Yeah, for sure.
And build old cold frames. What's a cold frame? These 2x4 windows. What are those for?
They're used just to harden the plants off, to keep the wind and not so much the cold off them, but in the early goings when you're trying to harden the plants, it's useful to have those. We'd find instead of risking just putting them out on the deck or whatever, bring them back inside at night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wally, is this something that you've used before?
What, a cold frame?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used them before. Not that often. I mean, maybe when I first started out, I tried using cold frames for basically the hardening process.
Yeah.
So that's a good approach. I was going to ask you, I mean, for the hoop house, do you do anything with those hoop houses in midsummer in terms of growing, or is it just basically to get the seedlings going?
We put the covering over it, and I just keep the sides up, and we have like drip irrigation put in there, so it maintains itself pretty well. It'd be nice to put that fabric down instead, like you're saying, with the weeding, just to maximize your space. Also, you have to watch the spacing as well, and these things grow so fast.
Yeah, so in terms of cooler too, this is something that I've been really thinking and throwing ideas back and forth between me and Kevin, how important it is for us to have a cooler. Like with our plan next year, we'll only be growing 1,600 square feet really for, I'll say, like our really first year of growing cut flowers. More so, like just with the investment, we're not sure like how much we can put in the cooler. So I was telling to Roxanne like last week, maybe like with our plans on what to plant, maybe choose varieties that wouldn't need pre-cooling really. And with the marketing strategy that we're doing, I really wanted to pre-sell them or sell it right away, and so I'll be like just cutting and making bouquet like the day before we sell them. So at least maybe for the first year we can survive without the cooler, just watching on the schedules on when are we gonna putting the bouquets together, pre-selling them and sell it like during farmers market day on a Saturday, or on a fruit stand during the week.
Yeah, it's a really good strategy. Really good strategy. We're always supportive of pre-selling, and especially in your situation. But I mean, vegetables are just as perishable. Microgreens, same situation. Anytime that you can pre-sell, but that cooler really is going to take you to the next level. And so working towards getting to the volume where you can even afford it out of your own sales is I think great planning ahead of time. I wanted just to keep us moving here and just kind of go over your land base so folks can kind of see these pictures. These are great. So you basically for 2018 would have a second one of these hoop houses that we see here, which would be a 10 by 20. So that's the 400 square feet additional. The greenhouse that you'd have, which would be about 60 square feet. And then you're going to add 2 new garden plots of 20 by 30, right?
Yeah, that's about the footprint. It's just a matter of, like, I have about an acre of land you could see there, like including the back. Just a matter of expanding and like putting the time into it. But I mean, you could rent a sod cutter, you know, for a day or two, or they have these manual kick sod cutters you can rent for a week, and it's just a matter of putting the time into it, clearing off the sod, and we have a local source for organic cow manure. I'd also like to start, you know, raising chickens and doing things on my own as well, where you can use that as a source for fertilizer, organic fertilizer, and of course for composting and things like that.
It's great.
The end of this year, we're going to put down a cover crop as well on both plots, and have that ready to go for the springtime.
Perfect. Wally, any other thoughts before we jump into the marketing there?
Well, I like that idea of the just going to market and being able to load up, let's say, buckets for $10 or $20. I think that's a pretty good idea, having that U-pick approach. And this the event partnering with an event coordinator sounds like that could be big. I was going to ask, I mean, if that becomes really big for you next year, can you ramp up your production fairly quickly, or is that going to have to wait until next, 2019?
Well, I think, yeah, ramp it up in 2019. I think we would want to stick with the 600 square feet for now. With the partner with the event coordinator, this will not be all from the farm. I mean, that is also like the reason why, like, the question about the cooler, if I should have it or not, because if I'm partnering with an event coordinator, I will still be buying imported flowers, and those ones are high maintenance, because they need, especially in the summer, if the event is in the summer, some of the flowers needs to be in a cooler. So I think, partnering with the event coordinator, I will still have to be very conservative on the events that I will take on, because, well, one, I don't want to overwhelm myself, but at the same time, yeah, like, doing the flower farm is already like a lot of work, and although the event are really helpful in selling the flowers like right away. Like, if I have a book event on a week, like, I could easily like save up like the 2 weeks of cuttings and dedicate all for the event, yeah, so that is where kind of like factors that we are considering about still, like, in relation, like, with having a cooler, and then tying up with this event coordinating business, really moderately do this 2008 and see what is really just realistic, yeah, for what we can do.
Yeah. So let's talk just a little bit about that U-pick, because this is something, I'm not sure if everybody heard this or not that's on the call here tonight, but this is awesome. You have a open farm day where people can just kind of come and pick their own flowers and load them into their buckets. Do you actually have folks already doing that?
We do. There is, I'm pretty sure, Manitoba has two flower farm existing already, and there are both actually kind of like in our area, like southern Manitoba. And one of them on their website, yeah, we have a lot of like DIY brides, and kind of like wanted to go away from the traditional go into the florist, and they are like the DIY creative brides, and they wanted to do the flowers themselves, and yeah, they offer like a bucket for about like $70 Canadian, and you get about like 60-70 stems in there. So I heard about the idea, read about and we've actually passed by the farm, and yeah, I think part of like selling flowers and growing flowers, you are also selling the experience. I think that is one how we can differentiate ourselves from the traditional you buy your bouquet like in the grocery store. I think going into the farm and experiencing it, cutting yourself, I think that adds value to not only the flowers that the people are picking, but being in here.
It really does add value, and it gives you the ability to even charge a little bit more, and you have a captive audience at that point. And in one of our most recent meetups, it was really important for folks to understand how our past member had leveraged having people do their pickups of their CSA at their farm, because they were able to upsell them on a bunch of different other items while they were there, even inviting other vendors. So if you localize and centralize your customers coming in to you, and especially on certain times or days when you know they're going to be there, you can add a lot to that experience.
And the advantage to where we are located, or Kevin's place is located, we are on a rural highway, and he's a corner lot. So people have driven by, people have honked at us on two different occasions, you know, while working outside, working on the hoopah. So people are getting curious, you know, what are we doing there? So I think that is already creating a little bit of a buzz, people driving by. And so next year they can actually get to stop by and pick their own flowers.
Yeah, that's great. So 2018, your crop repertoire you are targeting here is the Bachelor Button Classic, Magic, Bells of Ireland. I love all these hardies in here. And then some lilacs, some peonies. The first one is above lavender. Is that pronounced alliums?
Oh, alliums, yeah. So I went to Horticulture Week in Saskatchewan in July, and they had a workshop just dedicated to alliums. We are just like talking for 2.5 hours all about alliums, and they are like my instant favorite because some of them are perennials. They just add so much into an arrangement or like by itself. So I think that is my new personal favorite. That's why I put it there. We must have that.
That's great. And when you're targeting your source of seed supply, you're going to a website online, which is Floret Flowers. Is that right?
Yeah, they are in Washington Valley. They are one of my flower heroes. They're only farming on a 2-acre farm, and they are growing their own seeds as well. But I can only get seeds from them because a lot of the bulbs that they can't really ship to Canada yet. But since I've had this like slide or this information given to Roxanne, I have a new list of resources and a lot of like Canadian grown. So it will be. We also have because another part of the repertoire for our garden will be native plants. We have a great place called Prairie Originals in Manitoba, and all of those will be local. So I think we would want to go that stream as well.
That's right. Okay, good. We're going to go on to the numbers here. I know that probably a lot of folks have been waiting. If you're ready for the numbers, give me a 1 in that question box. I want to make sure you're all awake. Kim, Joe, Jackie, Jonathan, Tina, you all still alive? Thank you. Hi, Tina. I just want to make sure you're all still with us. I know it's a late night for a lot of you. So real quick, if you have a list of a few other sources for flowers, especially I know that a lot of people are going to be interested in this, could you please get them to Roxanne, and we'll post them in the members area on the Facebook group, on our group page on Facebook, and then everyone will have access to them there, which would be great.
I have a news that I can give to Roxanne,
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, thanks. Okay, great. So let's go through the numbers. What we're looking at for the plan for 2018, 1,600 square feet, $9,000 in revenue, and only 15 weeks of marketing weeks. This is the mid-June through mid-October. 50 bouquets plus per weekly units, $600 in weekly revenue with total units at about 750 bouquets. All these numbers look right?
Yes.
And you got 40 cans of small bouquets at $10 and 10 cans of large bouquets at $20, and then potentially having some pails of U-Pickets at $70. Is that right?
Yeah. You know what? For people coming for an event, they can easily pick a pail of like about like 70, or we could even go more. I think that would be an easy sell because you cannot get that value anywhere else, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Any thoughts as to a CSA where people buy flowers that they get on a weekly or biweekly basis during your marketing weeks, and they pay in advance and they come and pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
You think that would work for your?
Yeah. Yes, I have considered it for sure. And you know what? For the size that we are doing, I mean, friends have already been interested. We have friends from the city. A lot of them have moved into their, like new houses, and this is one of the first things that they actually wanted to do, but just didn't really have the time this year. You know, so having them come on board on us. We have friends coming over like this coming weekend, just you know, to hang out and see how is our garden looking right now and what are our plans in 2018. And I think that will be our opportunity to pitch in the idea to them as well. You know, how can they support here and what can they get in return?
Yeah, that's great. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Roxanne, this is a little quiz that everybody had, that everybody gets to participate with in the end. Which one of these is not all local? Which one of these do you think is got only imported flowers, and which one do you think, and then which one is not all local? Is that right, Roxanne? Did I get that question right?
Well, one of the bouquets is not all local. Let's put it that way.
Okay, great.
So the question is,
everybody take a guess.
Which bouquet has imported flowers?
This is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. Which one of these 3s is not all local and has imported flowers in it? So go ahead, and I'd like to get everybody jump in here. Thank you, Tina, for being the first one. All right. We're going to wait for everybody. I know it's late. Have a look at the pictures.
No.
100% attention right now. I can see you all looking. Okay. We've got some votes streaming in. I love these little quizzes, Roxanne. These are awesome. Jonathan, 1, 2, or 3? I know what you mean by middle. I'll put you down for a 2. All right. All right. So far, we could have done this as a poll, actually, Roxanne. So far, we have 3 votes for 3, 2 votes for 1, and 3 more votes for 2 that have come in so far. So it's almost, oh, here's some more coming in. It's almost broken down evenly. So Lourdes, can you tell us which one is the one that has the imported flowers in it?
The third one.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
so
that's
this
correct, because it looks so similar to the rest of them.
Well, but it's the what? The Gerbera daisies and is it verbena?
Gerbera daisies and then the roses as well. Those are imported. I think the daisies are from BC actually. The roses are from Ecuador. I have some Veronica in there, which I think are from Italy or South America as well. But the amaranthus, yeah, that's from the garden, and all the bachelor button, the phlox, and the daisies in there are from the garden.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Well, we definitely want to wish you good luck, Lourdes, for 2018. We'll be watching. We'd love to see what happens.
The name of your farm. I know you've just decided on it. The name of your farm is what?
Masagana Flower Farm.
Masagana, and what does that mean?
Masagana is the Tagalog term for the word bountiful.
Aha, nice. Nice. And I love your tagline, live an inspired life. It's a great one.
Thank you.
Tina had a quick question. She just threw it out. She says, do you plant in the fall for spring flowers, or do you start your seedlings in midwinter?
You know what? Unfortunately, with our hardiness zone, it is hard we won't be able to do, actually we can, but we have to do a lot of cover. But we don't plan to plant bulbs in the fall for spring. Yeah, our hardiness zone is 2B, so everything on the ground will just freeze.
Yeah, we have to pull the bulbs up every fall time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Let's see here, Roxanne. We have another meetup coming September 26th. And who's this cowboy here?
Yeah, that's John LeClaire, and his weeds got the better of him. So we definitely know some people need to talk about workflow. So Wally's going to tell us how to use 3-spin concepts, the work rate, work session, and workflow to get on top of your all the tasks that you have to do in a farm and be your own best boss.
Yeah, that's great. I know that we actually, for those of you that are on the call that are members, you may not actually have our, I was just thinking about this, the flower module that we sell. It's part of our Grow Your Way to 100K program. If you're interested in that, we do have a members discount. So if you log in, you should see the members discount. If not, if you're not an active paying member, you can still contact Roxanne or our support team, and they will provide you a discount on the Grow Your Way to 100K program. And that will give you the entire breakdown and model for getting a flower farm off the ground, up and running right away. Speaking of which, I guess that takes us to this workflow session, Manage It or Lose It. We're going to be talking about that. And we do have a surprise coming out. We don't just ask you all to watch your email. We're going to have another beta group for a new product. For a few of you that might want to participate, it will be a really awesome new product for those of you who maybe have been dabbling or at a hobby level and want to take this and go full steam with it for 2018. So we'll be talking about that upcoming. So watch your emails from Roxanne. Outside of that, Roxanne, I guess we should call it a night. I really want to thank you all. Thank Deborah and Lourdes and Kevin for being here tonight. And if you all could, before you go, could you just send a quick thank you note to Roxanne and Wally for all the time and effort they put into these presentations, putting them together, getting all the information, and doing the run-throughs with our guests and everything. It makes a huge difference, and it's quite amazing to see the quality that Roxanne and the thought that Roxanne puts into all these things every single week. So it means a lot, and we read all your comments. So if you could just give us a quick thank you before you go, we'd love it. And any comments that you have also. We'll have this recording up in the members area probably sometime tomorrow, and you can also look forward to that if you want to watch the replay at all. So again, thanks everyone. Thanks Deborah. Thanks Lourdes, and thanks Kevin. And good night, Wally. Good night, Roxanne.
Yep. Good night, Julian. Thanks everyone.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Lourdes. Bye, Kevin.
Bye, good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.